Welcome to Mastering Life's Adventures, an educational podcast about tapping into your true self, the soul, your soul, the substance of your life, to discover what life's ups and downs are really about, and how to have a greater sense of purpose, peace, joy, and fulfillment. I am Dr. Judith Holder, your host, coach, psychologist, fellow seeker who enjoys diving into the connections between spirituality, psychology, wellness, and your everyday life's adventures. All preparing and polishing you like the facets of a magnificent diamond to be your best self. If you're craving more from your life, you are in the right place. Come, let's journey together and transforming what you know into who you really are. Mastering Life's Adventures begins now.
Hi, I'm back. And I want to talk about another barrier and roadblock to soul progress. And that is constant complaining. Constant complaining that goes on. And I think it can be like kryptonite. That has happened so much. Just think about your day and think about the things that come up. And think about the things that start to evolve as you're moving through your day that you may be complaining about, or within that week, or within several weeks, or within a month, that you're finding that you're complaining. And complaining can come in the form of whining and fussing about things, or it can come in the form of being grumpy and grumbling about what's taking place and not liking it. It usually involves some form of dissatisfaction that we do have, some form of disapproval that may be taking place in our worlds, both work world and our family world and our relationships, even about who we are and how we look and how we show up, is complaining, this complaining that takes place or goes on. Now, I'm not saying complaining doesn't have its place. It does. Because there's certain things that go on in terms of customer satisfaction that you want to put a complaint in about. That's fine. But I'm talking more about this never satisfied type of a complainer. And we can all move in that direction, but you prefer for your soul evolution and growth to move away from. And that never satisfied complainer is a person actually, it's as if they have these things that are not working in their world, and they're telling the world. They're telling whoever they can meet and see and about what went wrong in their world, what needs to be improved, how it needs to be improved. They'd like to tell the story about it, and they get stuck in telling the story. And that's where the challenge is that because they get stuck in talking about the complaint or the complaints that are going on in their world, they actually develop these neural pathways. And in developing these neural pathways, the brain gets shaped over time because there's neuroplasticity of the brain, and which just gets so bent on and so used to complaining that it becomes second nature. That whatever goes on, the person is seeing through the filters of complaint. And that's what we have to guard against, is not getting to that extreme that we're complaining about everything and anything, because that's the pathway of our brain. The neural pathways are flowing down, and we have to realize that is not in an alignment with our soul and our soul evolution. And it definitely creates a barrier. And it creates a roadblock for our progress, because that level of complaining really creates this numbness for the soul, because it probably gets tired of hearing the complaints that go on, and we may not even be aware of the frequency by which we are complaining. And we have to monitor that for ourselves if we're on a soul path and wanting to evolve and grow and expand. But the never satisfied complainer, and besides develop this habit that is produced, they also move into what is also known as the chronic complainer or the pessimistic complainer. These are all seeing things in a negative light and wanting things immediately to change for themselves. And when they don't, they just complain more. And again, on a spiritual path, that's the why you don't want to take. That's the path that you don't want to take and go down. But there's another type of complainer, which is individuals like to vent. And yes, it does reduce stress in terms of venting. And allows your voice to be heard, similar to the chronic complainer or the never satisfied complainer. But it also creates a situation that if you're always venting, then you're also not necessarily looking for solutions to the problem that's taken place. And you're only looking to kind of talk about this didn't work and that didn't work and this didn't work with my kid and that didn't work at work. I'm so frustrated because these things keep on going on. It's part of the complaint that's taken place. So venting, we all do that, but it needs to be tapped down because it also is in the benefit for our soul progress and our evolution. It creates a roadblock, and we're not aware of the fact that if we're venting so much, then what we first are trying to do in that venting, as well as even in that other level of never satisfied complainers, is we're always searching for people to validate our perspective. And we want to build solidarity around that perspective, which again becomes like a habit of complaining and developing that solidarity. But what we have to realize is, yes, we have a group of people who may agree with us, but it's not in the service of our soul. They also start seeing things in a similar light, in a similar way. So complaining can be contagious. And we don't want to be with people who are constantly complaining because it doesn't help our soul evolution. It doesn't help us to make progress because we now are moved into the pathways of negativity, be it the never satisfied complainer or the venting. If you're always venting with whatever is going on, then again, that neural pathway is created. And also it moves you into seeing things in a negative light and not seeing the gift of the situation that be in front of you, or not allowing you to grow in a particular way from that experience that you had, that you were complaining. You wanted to flip it and see it is more about how can I grow? One of the things that happens with this venting it all the time is that you don't develop a diplomatic approach. You don't see both sides of the situation. And that's what the soul wants us to be able to do. It wants us to engage in seeing, is there another way of looking at this? Even in our relationships that we have, in our partners and in our marriages, is there a way that I can see it from the other person's perspective and not just get into griping and complaining? And then when we start seeing it from another way, we're able to have maybe more of a conversation because we're able to ask our partner about, I know this situation keeps on coming up for us, and I'm trying to understand it from your perspective. What do you think is going on? You've heard my perspective, and I don't want to get into complaining about this, but I would like to get into actively doing something about it. And can we have a conversation around that? Or if we're at work, or even if you're in college and you're taking a course that you're complaining about, and it's moving you into that never satisfied type of situation in which you're having with how that course is going. And you are able to pull other people in and also complain about how the course is going. But you never talk to the instructor. You never thought about maybe there's something else that can be done to make the course more in attunement with what you're looking for and others are looking for. But instead you're complaining. Then that's not helpful to you or to the course or to the time that you're taking to spend in taking that course, be it a nighttime course or a daytime course or online course or whatever it may be. Is that we need to find a way in which to share our thoughts and feelings, but not in a complaining way, which moves us into that negativity, but more into what I call, which is an engaged complaint, engaging way. And this is more of a better direction to move in. And then in that engaging complaint, you are actually trying to look at ways to solve the problem. How to get an understanding of what may be going on and how to solve it. But guess what? Less than 25% of complaining is engaged complaints. Less than 25%. So 75% of complaining is usually through the lens of never satisfied complaints, that chronic, excessive complaints, and the venting complaints. Just venting to vent to more, and fussing and getting into grumbling more. But if we're on a soul path, we have to say, no more. I'm not going to complain. It's this complaint that I'm griping on, or I just want to make sure people validate me or recognize that I have a complaint and it's quote unquote valid. It's like, do I really need to do that? Do I really need to do that? Most likely you don't. You can be able to move into the engaged complaining. And that's where more are happy people are in that domain who complain about things. There's a set point they have of happiness or mindfulness or wanting to be their best self. As I've talked about in terms of this soul evolution and being your best self. Wanting to be their best self. So they're looking for things to refine, but it's not from the lens of complaining, of negativity, but it's from the lens of how might this be resolved? How might we be able to manage this or deal with this situation at work or at home or with your kids, or for you and your own personal thinking about how you did a particular activity or performed in a particular situation? How can I do it better? Because if we can start looking at things from that lens, then we reduce some of the stress hormone that is released through the negative, never satisfied, inventing complainers. We reduce some of that hormonal release of that stress or the cortisol that goes on in our body and impairs our immune system. It may move us into emotional eating because we're so upset about the situation. Or it may move us into just wanting to sleep, because that's our way out, is to sleep a lot. So there's ways in which we can manage some of the situations that come up in our lives as we're living our adventures. And what I'm saying is complaining and this never satisfied complaining, venting that's going on that is not serving the soul, we need to be able to be more mindful about. Because if we're not being mindful about it, then what we're allowing to happen in order for this other side to continue to go on of our chronic complaining and venting is like a pressure cooker. A pressure cooker. If you remember the old-fashioned pressure cookers that you would put something in that pressure cooker and it would build up steam, it would blow off steam. Or better yet, I just recently purchased a instant pot, which is like a pressure cooker, but it's so much more. I'm having fun getting familiar with the Instant Pot. But even with that Instant Pot, it has a pressure cooker component in which it builds up steam and it starts releasing it out. I mean, look what I said. It starts releasing it out into the atmosphere, into your kitchen, wherever you have your Instant Pot or your pressure cooker, releases it out, and it's still cooking and releases its pressure. Well, the pressure that is being released into that is going into the atmosphere. And we have to realize that our complaints, our chronic complaints and venting are going out into the atmosphere around us. And sometimes we're not aware of the fact that people just don't want to hang out with us because we complain so much without getting to a solution. It's moving us into that negativity that ultimately saps our energy and also saps the individuals that are around us. So they complain more. And so they're on the same bus. So do you want to be on the bus to take you to that town and stay in that town? But you have to ask yourself, when you're walking a spiritual path, do I want to be on this bus? The bus, a Complainville. I'm going to do another roadblock to our soul progress on Regretville. But right now, let's call this Complainville. And so do you want to be in that town? And do you want to, first of all, be on the bus to take you to that town and stay in that town? Not if you're on a soul path. You do not. You do not want to have these little gnats of energy that is being sapped from you in your soul evolution. You don't want to get stuck in these attitudes, because these attitudes become habits. And these habits are part then of our behavior, of how we think, how we feel, how we interact with other individuals. And what we're trying to do is lighten our load through soul awareness, that we can begin to say, I see that is a complaint. Have I done anything about it, or I continue to complain about it? Have I done anything about it, or I continue to complain about it? With all these different types of situations that come up in our life that are just opportunities to make wiser choices. Wiser choices about how we want to live and what type of energy we want around us and within us. What type of energy is occupying the spaces within us, in our minds, in our hearts, and in our body, that we have to begin to say, is this helping me or hindering me? And if it's hindering me because it's pulling my energies down, I need to do something about it. I need to start to switch immediately when I see this is happening to me. And we can. We can begin to make switches, but we have to be alert. If I were to say the ways in which you have to not even be that instant pot or that cooker building up all this venting or this complaining energy and seeping out outside of yourself, if you first begin by saying, what am I putting my attention to? And is what I'm putting my attention to, is it helping me or hindering me? Because I go back to what I said in one of the foundational episodes. Our attention informs our reality. Our attention informs our reality. So we want to be more conscious and intentional about what we're putting our focus around, so that we are putting it focused on something that is helpful, that is enlivening, that is creating more vitality and energy for us. And that's where the soul comes in. And the soul loves our attention. So being attuned to, what would my soul do in this situation? It's just the same thing you would ask, what would Jesus do in this situation? Or what would Buddha do in this situation? Or what would Gandhi do in this situation? Or what would Mother Mary do in this situation? Who are those key individuals that you have a affinity for or to? You start asking the higher, because they were walking a higher path. And so you're thinking, okay, they probably would not think this way, and they probably would not speak in this manner, and they probably would not have this particular type of attitude. Because we have to realize the soul is on the path of light, love, grace, the beautiful things in nature and around us, and also learning lessons that it needs to learn. Growing from those lessons, growing from those things. Yes, we will at times complain. Yes, we will at times feel as if we want to vent, but we don't want to stay there. We want to do that less and less and less. And ask for the greater good, the higher good. So that's where that attention comes in. And we have to guard our emotions. This is the next thing. We have to guard our emotions and maintain an element of calmness in our emotions. When we feel we're getting riled up about something, we have to say, okay, wait, stop. I'm getting riled up about this situation because, and fill in the blank. Do I need to get riled up about this situation? Or do I need to journal about this situation? Write down what I think is the next best step? write down what I have control over and what I don't have control over, and then take it from there. But just to get riled up and emotional and upset about something, we want to conserve our energy. We want to conserve our energy. We on our higher path, and our path is a soul path. And that path is a path of joy and conservation of energy. Be aware, okay, if this is a situation that's happening that's moving into that chronic complaint or venting, automatically, quickly close the mouth and think, what's up? I'm back there again. Good to know, but I'm not going to harp on myself or harp on other individuals. I'm just going to make a pivot. I'm just going to make a change. I'm not going to say, or I'm going to say to individuals that I find that I'm complaining to is, what do you think is the solution here? Because one thing about the complainers is they're not looking for solutions most times. The venting, maybe, but they have to be careful not having a closed mind to looking at other perspectives about things. But if you move into more being that engaged complainer is looking for possibilities, another way of doing this, another way of thinking about this, another way of having to manage the particular type of situation. The other aspect in order to help to keep a soul perspective about this and being more in that flame of engaged complainer, but even then, I'm saying we're going to do less of that too after a while, because we are looking at the higher view and figuring out how do we want to get to the higher view and not having to complain about having to climb the mountain to the higher view, but we're just climbing it and getting there to the higher view. So that gives in that perspective taking is the other component that I wanted to share with you. Sometimes we do need a higher view, and we need to have perspective taking, in that we need to bounce, as I would say in one of my analogies, that about looking at soul evolution. Do we need to be on that trampoline, bouncing and asking, what is the higher view? What is it that I need to see that I'm not seeing? How else do I need to look at this? I'm taking it this way, this situation that's happening to me. Is there another way of taking this situation? So there you'll see there's certain themes I keep on bringing around to, because these themes allow you to be able to say it's not that hard to do. The same thing that I said in this situation that you can do with, as we're talking about constant complaining. And you can be able to do in another barrier or roadblock that I'm talking about. And it becomes easier and easier and easier. So part of the issue around the constancy in which we're complaining, it gets back to that issue around attention. If where we put our attention is what we get more experiences around. So do you really want more complaining, venting to take place? Or would you want more focused around solutions, engaged complaints that when they need to happen, you're engaged in a full functional way about how I need to look at this and not allow it to affect my emotional self. And if it is affecting my emotional self, I'm working on calming it. I'm working on breathing through it. I'm working on seeing the positivity in it. I'm working on being at peace with the situation, if that is possible. So the last component that I want to talk about in helping you to be able to look at that soul greater perspective of moving past the barriers and the roadblocks is loving regard. Loving regard. You love your situation. You love yourself. You love your soul. So you will use how we can love help me to be kinder in this situation. How can love help me say kinder things that are taking place in the circumstances I find myself in at work or at home or in my thinking about how I did in a particular situation, my performance? What is the loving thing to do here? What is the loving aspects of gratitude? Even in the midst of a situation that I didn't like and I like how it went for me, how can I be able to still take some kernels, take some components of the situation and learn from it and grow from it? Because that's what the soul is about. learning, growing, advancing. Learning, growing, advancing. Learning, growing, and advancing in a frequency of gratitude, of love, of appreciation, of knowing that not all things are going to feel so great, but we know that there's something that we can garner from this situation. So it moves us into not complaining, but looking internally at ourselves and our heart and looking at our higher purpose of why we're on this planet and what we're here to learn and grow from, and not get caught off guard by complaining, constantly complaining about things that are not going to be helpful in the long run to our soul evolution and soul progress. Now, please don't hear me saying never complain. There is constructive complaining, which I'm talking about as this engaged complainer looking for solutions. And that's usually less than 25% of what things we complain about. And maybe we make that higher percentage, or we learn the way to ask our inner self about what do I need to do here before we ask so many other people in the form of what the chronic complainer or the never satisfied complainer, the venting complainer will do is they'll ask everyone and they'll talk to everyone and let everyone know the disagreements and what is going on and the stories behind it and so forth. That's what I'm saying needs to stop. And what we have to be mindful of is our soul needs. And our soul is always desiring harmony, peace, always looking for enlightenment and a greater understanding about things, always wanting to be wrapped in the qualities of the loving regard that we can have for ourselves and have for other individuals. Always paying attention to the soul that exists so much within us that wants our attention and will guide us and help us along life's way. Something to think about. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining me for this episode on Mastering Life's Adventures, being your best self through soul evolution. If you have enjoyed what you've heard today, I would be delighted if you would share this episode with others, leave a thumbs up, and subscribe to my Mastering Life's Adventures podcast. Look forward to your joining the next episode. Please leave any comments or suggestions you might have below. Bye for now.